Assalamualaikum and a very good morning to Prof. Saludin. My name is Siti Zaharah BINTI of MALIK. My matric number 277347 and my partner for this project UMIE ASYIKIN BINTI MOHAMED RASHID. Her matric number 276994 and we are from Group 40. We would like to present our report about the analysis of unemployment rate on economic performance in Malaysia. So let's me and ASYIKIN show you about our report. Let's go. Macroeconomics is a branch of economy that investigates the behavior, structure, and capacity of big aggregate at the national or regional level, such as economic growth, employment and unemployment rate, interest rate, and inflation. Among other things, economic performance or crisis can be for any country, and Malaysia is not exception. Having experienced such as occurrences several times since independence, Malaysia has had number of severe economic downturn. The employment situation is becoming increasingly serious. According to International Labour Organization, 1.25 billion people will lose their job as a result of the COVID-19 issue. Furthermore, a global economic crisis is believed to have occurred in 2008 as a result of various factors leading to the formation of a worldwide economy. These include high oil prices, which result in high food prices as a result of relying on petroleum for food production, as well as using food crop products such as ethanol and bioethanol as alternative to petroleum and global inflation. Last but not least, exchange rate is an essential macroeconomic policy variable since it represents a country's international competitiveness. The adjusted weight average rate at which a country currency is exchanged for a basket of foreign currency is known as the nominal exchange rate. The exchange rate also affects a country's commerce, deciding whether it has trade surplus or deficit. A lower home currency would boost export, making import more expensive. As a result, individuals choose local items over imported one because they are more expensive.
As for literature review, I will go over each of the DV and IV that we use for this project. Our project DV, GDP is the first thing to look at. GDP is the total worth of an economy, goods and services produced in a given year, expressed in base year prices. It's sometimes called CPI adjusted GDP or constant currency GDP. GDP is the market value created by all resident units employed in Malaysia before capital investment consumption provision. Compile cost and production technique. This include GDP export, currency value, job losses, government spending, foreign direct investment, and other factors. From 1970 to 2016, Malaysia's economic growth following a cyclical trend. According to the World Bank, Malaysia's GDP shrank significantly in 1977 and 1998. Due to the Asian financial crisis, Malaysia's GDP fell by 1.04% in 2015 and 0.73% in 2016. According to Jin, Malaysian GDP expanded at a slower rate in 2016, 4.2% than in 2015. Because of this event, even during a recession, it affected certain economic indicators like inflation, exports, and international trade. However, GDP quantifies the market value of all goods and services generated by a country over a period of time. Real GDP is adjusted for inflation, CPI. Nominal GDP numbers are often supplied as well as real of constant GDP, which nominal GDP corrected for price inflation. Due to the Asian financial crisis, Malaysia's GDP shrank by 7.35% in late 1998. Malaysia had the fastest economic recovery in Asia in 1999. The global financial crisis originated from the US in 2009. The three elements affected Malaysian GDP growth are inflation, FDI, and female labour force. Next will be our first IV, unemployment. Unemployment is one of the macroeconomic indicators of inefficient capital allocation. Hence, it considers unemployment a key economic indicator. The unemployment rate varies based on the economic environment. Physical, social, and economic employment all exist. Joblessness impact people's physical and mental health. Unemployment, on the other hand, might induce social alienation due to emotional instability and a sense of guilt. Identify joblessness, poverty as the main source of social exclusion. Unemployment is a measure used when someone is unemployed but has been an active effort to obtain work in the previous 4 weeks. Discover a direct link between inflation and unemployment. In the 2013 World Employment Report, Malaysia ranked 20 with a 3.1% unemployment rate. Malaysian unemployment rate was 3.2% in October 2019 with 512,100 unemployment. According to Malaysian Labour Force participation rate, 540,200 people were unemployed in 2018. The unemployment rate fell by 0.1% in 2019 compared to 2018. There are many Malaysian university graduates, yet just a few can find work. Malaysian graduates' unemployment has recently been a national topic. During the early phase of COVID-19 crisis, unemployment outpaced job prospects by a large margin. The COVID-19 outbreak has harmed Malaysian labour market. The Malaysian Department of Statistics report job losses and shorter working hours across nearly all industry, pushing overall number of unemployed to 711,000 in 2020, up from 508,200 in 2019. Inflation is an important macroeconomic variable that economic actors, including government, fear because it has detrimental effect on the structure of production costs and welfare levels. According to Hamilton, inflation occurs when the growth of the money supply outpaces the growth of the economy, goods and services. Inflation is an increase in the total level of a country products and services price. As price grow each dollar by less products and services. Inflation is defined as an increase in the general level of prices. Industrialized countries should aim for yearly inflation rate of 1 to 3%, whereas developing countries should aim for rates of 11 to 12%. Inflation is determined by central bank money supply. Inflation can be demand pull, cost push, and imported inflation. Chen and Tan argue that foreign factors drive Malaysian inflation. Malaysia was not immune to COVID-19 global GDP growth and inflationary effect. COVID-19 is causing cost push inflation in Malaysia. The decline of the exchange rate will increase the cost of imported raw commodities. Lastly, exchange rate. The exchange rate is the number of domestic units required to buy one unit of another currency. The exchange rate is significant because it allows government to transfer funds and compare commodity prices. Overall, the national currency competitiveness in foreign exchange market has been improved. From 2000 to 2016, exchange rate volatility has little impact on Malaysian economic growth due to the lack of direct correlation. Volatility impeded Malaysian export. The impact of the US dollar depreciation on the crude oil price on Malaysian exchange rate exposure indicates that international companies are more susceptible, followed by domestic and foreign asset companies. An outbreak of COVID-19 has a significant impact on the foreign exchange rate. The exchange rate for $1 in March 2019 was RM 4.08 and fell to RM 4.26 in July 2020. Malaysian currency depreciated.
As shown in this figure, there are three independent variables that are predicted to affect the changes in GDP performance in Malaysia, which are unemployment rate, inflation rate, and exchange rates. However, the dependent variable for this study is the rate of GDP in economic performance. For econometric model, in this study, we use the linear regression model. We choose this model because linear regression analysis is used to predict the value of one variable based on the value of another variable, and it is a method for modeling the relationship between scalar response and explanatory variables, and our research include the dependent and three independent variables. For justifications of variable, we use so many websites and we collect data from the website, which is DOSM, Department of Statistics of Malaysia, Macrotrend, and also World Bank. For data and sampling method, we use quantitative data. This research applies use of time series data for 30-year period spanning from 1990 to 2020. The World Bank provided GDP and exchange rate statistics. Meanwhile, the Malaysian Department of Statistics provided for employment data. The inflation rate was obtained from the Macrotrends website, which was sourced from the DOSM. The method of analysis, we use multiple regression analysis and the ordinary least square method OLS. It is used to estimate Malaysian gross domestic product. The hypothesis test is used to determine the significance of the model variables, and we discover that the independent variables of the unemployment rate, exchange rate, and inflation rate have a direct impact on the independent variable of economic performance.
We use eView for the analysis and discussion part because our Prof. Salahuddin did speak and thought about it. We analyze data from the docent, World Bank, and Macro Bank with eViews. The table illustrates the unemployment rate, inflation rate, and exchange rate in relation to real GDP. The period has 31 observations. The GDP variable has the greatest mean and median values of 5.4 to 7.097% and 5.79%. The second highest mean and median that have been recorded are exchange rate, which are 3.40967% and 3.5%. Unemployment recorded a mean of 3.380968% and a median of 3.30%. Inflation variable has the lowest mean and median values among other variables, where 2.53871% and 2.62%. The highest maximum value is GDP 10%, while the lowest maximum value is exchange rate 4.3%. The highest minimum value is exchange rate 2.5%, and the lowest is GDP negative 7.36%. For the standard deviation for GDP, unemployment, inflation, and exchange rate are lower than the mean value. The exchange rate, GDP, and inflation variable are all negatively skewed, whereas unemployment is positively skewed. The correlation analysis table shows that the relation between the exchange rate and unemployment with GDP is negative. Thus, the correlation between GDP and inflation is positive relationship, which shows a weak negative correlation. A positive correlation coefficient indicates that as one variable's value increase, the other variable's value increase as well. Multiple regression analysis. For this section, first we must estimate the sample regression function and then interpret it as illustrated in the image on this slide. Next, we use critical value to test the individual statistical significance, and this part we create hypotheses with beta 1, beta 2, and beta 3. Following that, we obtain the same critical value of 2.06 for all three hypotheses and a different value for the t-statistic. Following that, we create hypothesis H0 equal to beta 1 equal to beta 2 equal to beta 3 equal to 0, and H1 equal to beta 1, beta 2, and beta 3 are not equal to 0. Thus, we get F statistic equal to 1.326 and F critical we get 2.96. In conclusion, we reject H0 since the p-value is less than the level of significance. As seen in the graph for this project's normality part, the probability of Chakra is less than the significant level 5%, and hence we reject the null hypothesis. As a result, the residuals are not regularly distributed.
Next, autocorrelation is a mathematical representation of the degree similarity between a given time series and a lab version of itself over a successive time interval. It's conceptually similar to the correlations between two different time series, but autocorrelation uses the same time series twice. Once is original form and once lag one or more time period. As the result shows, the autocorrelation is more than the significant bound at the lag 1, 0.068, and its value is significantly different from 0 at a 5% significant level. The null hypothesis failed to reject. We conclude that the errors are series correlated. By using Birch-Goffrey series correlations LM test, the LM test shows that the p-value for the F test is 0.036. As a result, we reject the null hypothesis at the 5% level of significance, and we conclude that the errors are serially associated with evidence of autocorrelations. As a result, we devise solutions by using the Cochrane or cut correlations for the AR1 process. As we can see, the result, all spikes do not exceed the significant borders according to the parallelogram of the residual. As a result, there is no compelling evidence of serial correlations among residual. Next is for the heteroscedasticity. In statistics, a heteroscedasticity happens when the standard deviations of predicted variable monitor over different values of independent variable or as related to prior time periods or non-constant. We're using informal and formal method, but we're more excited when using the white test. White test is that can return significant result even the variances of the error are equal. This happens because the model is general one and may pick up other issues in our data, although it won't specify what those issues are. According to Richard Williams, one of the reasons the test is more general is because of the added term that test for the more types of heteroscedasticity, like adding square of regressor and to try and identify non-linear shapes like an hourglass. As we can see the result, the value of chi-square statistics is 20.86, and the F value is 4.8, which more than the critical value. The p-value 0.001, which smaller than significant value of 0.05. So we reject the H0 of homoscedasticity at 5% significant level. We conclude the error term is heteroscedasticity model. Next is multicorrelation. Multicorrelation is the occurrence of high intercorrelations among two or more independent variables in a multiple regression model. In general, multicorrelation can lead to wider confidence intervals that produce a less reliable probability in terms of the effect of independent variables in a model. Originally, multicorrelation was described as the presence of perfect or exact linear relationship between some of all of the independent variables in a regression model. When two or more independent variables have an exact linear connections, perfect multicorrelation exists. If the IV are strongly intercorrelated, it's because they have too much linear dependence. Under assumptions of 7 of the conventional linear regression model, we demand that none of the IV independent variable be perfect correlated with any other independent variable or with any linear combinations of other independent variable. We also use variance inflation factor VIF. It's a measure of the amount of multicorrelation in a set of multiple regression variables. This ratio is calculated for each independent variable. A high VIF indicated that associated independent variable is highly correlated with the other variable in the model. Individuality test, we show that none of the very few partial slope coefficient differ statistically from 0 if R2 is high, for example higher than 1.0. The R2 is in this study is 0.37, which is relatively low, so the F test and all the T tests are significant. There seems to be no multicorrelation problem since the VIF equal by 1, not more than 1.
In the conclusion, based on the discussion, we decided that GDP has the highest mean and median values among all variables. Inflation variable had the lowest mean and median. 3 variables have kurtosis values less than 3, but GDP has kurtosis larger than 3. If kurtosis is below 3, the dataset had narrower just than a normal distribution. After calculating the correlation, we discovered that the exchange rate and unemployment are negatively correlated with GDP. Thus, GDP and inflation have a positive relationship with a weak negative correlation. To test for series correlation among residuals, we use concurrent occurred correction for the AR1 process. We can also conclude that the model is homoscedastic, that there is no difficulty with multicollinearity inside the model. Based on this analysis, the government should set a goal formulations to upgrade their skills and technologies in order to reduce unemployment. Finally, to confront the predicted high unemployment rate, the government has moved to strengthen its own economic defenses. Among these are economic liberalization and stimulus package during the MCO period. For the sake of the country's economy and the life of those threatened by rising unemployment, the government and the Ministry of Human Resources have to step up to the plate.